everyone, and welcome to AWS Julie. For today's video, we're continuing with our new series on needed AWS fundamentals to ensure you pass your AWS certification exams. In the last lesson, I said that this lesson would be on Amazon Redshift, but I decided to go ahead and jump into building in AWS. But I promise under the database section, we will talk about database fundamentals and the AWS database services, covering all of them, including Redshift in much more detail. But let's jump ahead because I want to start building and get in the console. But first, we have to start with AWS Accounts. AWS Accounts are not only required to use AWS services, they are also one of the most important tools available to a solutions architect. So for this lesson, we'll talk about key features provided by AWS Accounts. AWS Accounts might seem like a very basic understanding, but what accounts are and how they work are crucial because as a solutions architect, you're going to encounter very simple systems operating in a single AWS account, but you will also encounter more complex systems that use tens or even hundreds of AWS accounts. And that is why AWS accounts are a needed AWS fundamental for the exam and in the real world. An AWS account is where you provision your services. It is also where your AWS services log their usage to, and also with an AWS account, you can log into that environment. And these services you provision in your AWS account generate a bill, and that is billed to you from the payment method you choose when you create your account. And remember, this is the fifth criteria of cloud computing. It is also important to understand that when you create your AWS account, it is yours, and only yours until you grant access to others. AWS accounts by default do not have permissions until you grant permissions. In the cloud computing lesson, we mentioned that AWS isolates usage of the public cloud from other customers of AWS. AWS provides services, and some of those services are public services that are shared between different AWS customers. But all AWS services are inside of an AWS account, and like we said earlier, all accounts by default have no permissions until you specifically grant those permissions. So when you log into your AWS account, you will see that AWS provides authentication and authorization. Let's pause for a quick fundamental check and talk about the difference between authentication and authorization. Authentication identifies and verifies who you are. Authorization determines what you as an identity can access within a system once you've been authenticated. And I really confused those when I was first getting started. So I just wanted to add those in case you were struggling too. But it is important you know when you create a new AWS account, you have access to the AWS Free Tier. And this is amazing because AWS gives you access for 1 year, but it is important to understand what is in the free tier for the different AWS services. So if we scroll down, for example, Amazon EC2 offers 750 hours per month for 1 year for specific instances. Amazon S3 offers 5 gigabytes of standard storage for 1 year. And then another neat one is AWS Lambda, which offers 1 million free requests per month for 1 year. And then you can dive in and see all of the others. I'll add a link in this lesson description for the AWS free tier. So let's get started and create an AWS account. We are going to need 3 things to create an AWS account: an email address that is not linked with another AWS account, a phone number where you can receive a phone call or text message, and we will also need a valid credit card for our billing method. This credit card will only be used when there are charges in your AWS account. So using the link provided in the lesson description, we're going to click on Create a Free AWS Account. So first we need to enter a root user email address and then choose an account name. So we've added in our root user email address that I just created for this account and an account name. We're going to verify that email address. So now we have to get a verification code from the email address that we provided. Okay, and so I found this in my spam folder, so make sure you check that. And my verification code is 113754. So let's go back and enter that, and we click verify. So great, we have verified our email. So now we need to create our root user password. And confirm that password. And continue to step 1 of 5. So now we need to enter our contact information, and we need to choose how we're going to be using AWS. So this, of course, is personal for me, so I'm going to go ahead and enter all of my information. And click that I've agreed to the terms, and then continue to step 2. And so now this is where we have to enter our credit card information. And remember, this credit card will be charged if you go outside of your free tier. And then we're going to verify and continue to step 3. So now we have to confirm our identity. So we have to enter our phone number that we just added and type the characters that we see, and then continue to step 4. And we're going to get a text message, so we have to verify our identity again. So I'm going to grab my phone, and my code is 3301. 3301. And we're going to continue to step 4 of 5. So this is where we have to create our support plan. And AWS provides different support plans. And if you're interested in learning more about each of the support plans, I cover this in my exam prep course for the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner course that is on Skill Builder. There is a free and a paid version, but it does go into a lot more depth on different support plans and which one that you might need depending on your requirements in your business. But I'm going to choose the basic, and I'm going to complete my sign up. And we get a congratulations. And now we can go to the AWS Management Console. But we have to sign in again. So we enter our root user email address and click next. And it looks like it saved my password, so I'm going to go ahead and click sign in. And this is our new AWS account. And you'll see that we have 0 issues. There's no cost and usage information because it's a brand new account. It does give you some get started with AWS, some training and certification, and then also a what's new tab, so that's pretty cool. And then recently visited AWS services is listed over here. You can also jump into services here, and then you can scroll down to find different services under their category. You can also jump in here and type in the search what you're looking for. I am going to create another AWS account for this fundamental series, and I will follow the same steps that we just used to create the second account later. But I want to show you that when we create our AWS account, we are created as the account root user. So if we go into IAM, you'll see that we have no users, no groups, no roles, no policies, and no identity providers. So this identity, the AWS account root user, is accessed by signing in with the email address and password that we just used to create the account. It is not best practice to use the root user for your everyday tasks because this account root user is given full administrative rights to the AWS account. And at this point, no one else has permissions on my account because I must explicitly grant any and all permissions. Also, you cannot edit the permissions of your account root user. It is best practice to safeguard your root user credentials and use them to perform the tasks that only the root user can perform. And in a later lesson, we will create an admin user and a few other users too. Let's also talk about how it works when we create different AWS services in our new AWS account. Well, when you create a new service, such as an Amazon EC2 instance, so let's go down to Compute and select EC2. And we will be walking through creating an Amazon EC2 instance in a later lesson, but for now we should understand that an EC2 instance is a type of virtual machine. That EC2 instance is created inside your AWS account, and right now that EC2 instance would be only accessible by our account root user because again we have not explicitly created any other users or granted any other permissions. So as you add different AWS resources and services to your account, no one besides the root user account can access those services until we create other users and grant permissions. But as we grant permissions, we have to also consider how to follow best practices to secure our AWS accounts and our resources. And if your account credentials are leaked and someone else gets access to your new AWS account, then only that account is affected. So as we build out our AWS account and resources, we will be talking about how to secure and limit the blast radius. For example, let's say you create a new AWS account and you already have 5 AWS accounts. If your new account credentials are leaked, you want to ensure that that is an isolated blast radius and that that security impact for the leaked credentials is limited to the single new AWS account, not the 5 other AWS accounts. Throughout this fundamental series, you will see that as you add services to your AWS account and use them, you are also charged for the time we use those services. Most AWS services are billed for the time the service is used, and in later lessons, we will also walk through how to create a billing alarm and how to stay within the AWS Free Tier. But you do have to enter a credit card in case you do have usage outside of the free tier. So AWS accounts are the way we access, build, and consume AWS services, and our AWS account provides authentication for us to log in, authorization to perform actions in our account like creating an S3 bucket or an Amazon EC2 instance, and it also tracks our usage and creates a monthly bill. If you found this content useful, a like and a subscribe would mean a lot to me. It really helps me know what y'all like, and it gives me an indicator that I'm building useful content. Now in the next lesson, we'll walk through how to secure this new AWS account that we just created. Thanks so much for watching.